there's not many secrets. I think people
No.
are always looking for some secrets. Um, but as we pointed out in the very beginning of the show, a lot of these things have been found upon thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now you have agency over your thoughts. You can think about your thoughts, and your thoughts don't always have to be adjacent to like a feeling, just because you think something, just because you see a particular post by somebody, let's say that you don't particularly like that person.
Yeah.
Just because you see a post by that particular person doesn't automatically equal that you're outraged.
Yeah.
Not, let's say that you don't like Donald Trump.
Sure.
Uh, Everything that Donald Trump says should not trigger you. Although what he says can oftentimes be very controversial. I would imagine there would be some times where you might have to displace who's saying it. And I just think that if we're going to try to be rational and we're going to try to understand this world, these are all things that you need to practice. And you talked
Yeah.
about self-awareness, and part of self-awareness is to pull yourself out of the current moment, pull yourself out of the current situation. When I think back to, what I was trying to do as a power lifter, you're just fighting so hard to be stronger, you're oftentimes you're trying to be stronger than the next guy.
Yeah.
And imagine if you had the insight to just pull back and to really zoom out from that particular moment, and to be able to kind of see yourself, and to be able to see other people around, and to almost as if you're like sneaking in and watching your own training session.
Yeah.
You would be able to give great advice to yourself on the things that you would be able to do to change. Like I could walk in, I don't know shit about jujitsu. I don't know shit about fighting, but I've been around long enough and I've seen successful people long enough. I can go into any MMA gym or any jujitsu place and immediately point out to the sensei things that they could do better. Because
Yes.
I know that there's things probably, and same with me. Like people can come into my powerlifting gym and say, hey, like, your culture could be a little bit better if you tried A, B, and C, because that's where all knowledge comes from. All knowledge comes from conjecture and people, kind of poking holes in what you're doing. Why are you
Yeah.
that warm up? You can say, I'm not really sure. We've always done it. That's what Sensei says to do. I could ask him and he'd be like, oh, it's just some stupid tradition. I could say, hey, well, actually, I think it'd be more effective if you maybe tried this. And maybe they don't do what I said because I don't know shit about jujitsu, but maybe they just try something different.
Yeah, exactly. It's the blinders. It's like we're so in it in the day to day. That's why I think health coaching is so fantastic, because I see it all the time when I do these coaching calls with clients where I'm like, there's nothing magical about me. I just get to look at your life through a different lens, because you're stuck in the day to day. You're raising the kids, you're working the job, you're doing this. And you're like, well, I do this thing every day. And I'm like, wait a minute. Let's talk about this. And then bringing up things like you said, like you got the video, how to not be offended. Another video you did that I love, that I am all about this, like have been for years, is the idea of non-negotiables. I'm like, what teeny tiny steps can you take every day? And that's what I try to show people too. Like what you're doing is what I call just live by example. It's like, hey, here's my story as Mark Bell. And yeah, I was a 330-pound world-class power lifter. And now I take 3 10-minute walks a day, and you can take walks every day. And people are like, why did the Jack Tan meathead millionaire just tell me to go for a walk? Like it like almost breaks their brain, But you just got to give people practical advice and live by example. I think about all these, speaking of Lane and guys like that, like all these Rogan nutrition debates that happen, like all these nutrition debates on Joe Rogan. I'm like, no one had their fucking mind changed. Nobody. Everyone dug their heels in on whatever side they were in. Where the average person, they want their mind changed via emotion. So it becomes this idea of live by example. It's like, hey, show me the science. And like, what if I show you this before and after picture from my client that lost 100 pounds? It's way more impactful, but everyone wants the perfect thing to do,
Yeah, I think some general principles can be adopted by
Yeah.
many, regardless of actual nutritional practices. Is intermittent fasting effective? It appears like it's very effective. Do you have to be a little bit careful and cautious with it? Yeah. You could overfast. I'm sure you're guilty of it. I've done it myself.
Yeah.
You overfast and you're kind of like in a daze and you're like, holy shit, like I overdid it. You can over keto yourself too, right? But like, how about could you eat less refined foods? Could you and maybe even more from a positive standpoint rather than like thinking about the things you can remove, what about the things you can add? Eating more protein.
Yeah.
The protein leveraging theory seems to be very powerful. There's still more that needs to be known about it, but there's a lot of nutritional studies that are for it, and there's a lot of empirical evidence. And I just know for my own self that if I utilize some intermittent fasting and I eat large amounts of protein, that it drives my hunger and cravings down from being a
Yeah.
former guy who was really big and heavy. And I also been like over 240 pounds since I was like 16 years old. So I've always had a big appetite. I've always been hungry, and it's been a thing for me to try to figure out how do I drive down some hunger. It appears that fiber can assist in driving down some hunger.
Yeah.
As much as people don't like to hear it, there's some information that artificial sweeteners can assist with driving down hunger. But some people might not like that route, but like coffee can drive down hunger. Bone broth can drive down some hunger. Just having something hot in your stomach can assist. And it's like, why don't we just weaponize the fuck out of people with as many methods as possible to assist them to lose some weight? Could you walk a couple minutes every day? Could you walk 3 times a day? Never mind the amount of minutes. Could you walk 3 times a day? Is this plausible? Maybe you're like, nah, I don't have the time. Could you walk once a day? Like, let's maybe start with that. Could you try to increase the amount of water that you drink?
Yeah.
Could you eat a piece of fruit? Could you have some vegetables? All these things are things where you're like, yeah, I don't really want to, but I could do that.
Yeah.
Because I think if I'm being honest with myself, and I would think that you're in a similar situation, I do that all the time to myself. I all the time I'm like, I don't really want to do that, but I'm going to do it. I don't really want to hit the heavy bag for another round, but I should probably at least hit it for 2 more rounds, And then sometimes you get to 5 rounds and you're like, I should go to like 8. And then you get to 8 and you're like, oh, you got 2 more. I'm going to go for 10.
Right.
And what I've shared with people is it's in that direction. You can go sliding downhill, or you can have some perpetual motion that makes you feel like you're sliding uphill and you're gaining a lot of progress, gaining a lot of ground, going to like new heights that you've never been to before because of the euphoria that happens when you're in the middle of a set and you did 8 reps and you're kind of shocking yourself. You're like, I didn't think I was going to be able to get to 6.
Yeah.
Or I didn't even think I was going to show up to the gym today because I felt like shit when I woke up today, or my knee was throbbing or my elbow was throbbing. Now here I am bench pressing. This feels great. And you do the extra set, you do the extra rep, and you're encouraged by continuing down that path. I mean, how many times have you been, on a run or in the middle of jujitsu and been like, this conditioning is out of hand. Like, this is crazy. I hope this guy slows down. I hope the guy I'm fighting slows down because I can barely get through the next moment. But you figure it out. It out. Then all of a sudden an exchange happens and you're on top.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, motherfucker, now I'm in control. You know what I mean? And you really push the pace. You push. That's kind of what I think about when I'm walking, when I'm running, when I'm lifting. I think about, I love MMA. I love the UFC. And I think about, the guys, towards the end of the 5th round in the championship fight. And they just keep talking about how this is a huge upset because the opponent, they don't talk about anything crazy about the guy. They don't say that he had some wild attribute that nobody else had. They just say, man, he really took it to Bones Jones, or he really took it to Conor McGregor because he pushed the pace.
Yeah. He just keeps trying.
Just try to, can you do it? Can you push the pace? Can you push it a little harder than you did yesterday? I have not met a human being that doesn't possess that ability. Everyone possesses the ability to be a little bit better than they were yesterday. I've never met one person. I've done thousands of talks and seminars on strength. I've never met one person in my life that doesn't possess the ability to get stronger, mentally or physically. I've never met one person. So because everyone has that ability, it's like, well, let's get to it, right?
Yeah. Well, what you're talking about too is like, it's the power of beginning, right? And that's what I love. You said like, hey, can you go for a walk every day? It's not, hey, can you go for a 45-minute walk every day? It's like the moment you put that factor on there, people just don't want to do it. Or it's like someone says, okay, I'm going to get in shape, and they buy P90X, right? And then they're looking at this 3-page printout of 90 workouts they have to do, where you're like, or you could go for a walk around your block tomorrow. Don't time it. Walk 6 telephone poles down and come back. You know, it's that idea of once you begin, things become quite easy as you build that momentum. But we set such big, lofty goals. It's like when you have a kid that's overweight, he's on day 1 of his journey, and he decides he's only going to follow on Instagram The Rock and Rich Froning.
He's screwed.
He's completely screwed.